Welcome, Ethan, to the Leaders Who Care series, our special youth series.
Woo!
Yeah,
Thank you
man.
so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Um, I'm excited that people hear all the good stuff you're doing. And I think a good place to start, as always, is tell us a little bit about yourself. Don't talk about the most of the stuff we're going to talk about. Tell your name, your age, where you live. Are you originally from there? You can tell about your family, maybe something you never told anybody and you want to reveal it to the world right now. You can do that too. Share a little bit.
All right. So my name is E-Train. That's what I go by on social media. I'm 13 years old. I live with my parents and my cat. And man, something that I never told anybody. Um, I have a big mouth, so it's probably nothing.
So you live with your parents and your cat. What's your cat's name?
My cat's name is Honey.
Honey. Cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. So
Um,
aside from the obvious that we're going to talk about, what's important to you? What have you like doing and all? Tell us a little bit about that.
so what's most important to me, I mean, there are a lot of things that are important to me, but I feel like the most important is kind of being there for the next generation. So, I mean, a lot of adults, if you're watching and you're an adult, you would think of me as the next generation because I'm a kid, as you can see. But what I do is I go to elementary schools, I even go to middle school. Some kids are like the same age as me, but I try to inspire them. And a lot of kids, they don't really have that spark of inspiration. They're in communities, they're in areas that don't really have the same resources that I have. I mean, you could see just I have this whole bookshelf full of beautiful books,
And
but
you've
a lot
read
of
all
kids
those
in
books?
I have read all of those books, and it's sad. What really inspires me, what really motivates me to continue the work that I'm doing is the fact that there are so many kids who don't have even a single book to their name. That's my audience. That's who I want to change their life. I
Okay,
just,
so I'm going to interrupt for a second because we're going to
sorry.
talk more about that, and that's fantastic. Um, I don't know if you have ever read a book called Many Lives, Many Masters, where people come back and they come back and they're reincarnated, and they're like old souls. So you might have a little bit of an old soul in you, where you got some smart background there from other important people. Where did the interest in reading books start, anyway?
Interest in reading books. So my parents, they read books to me. They read picture books to me, books about all sorts of different topics from the day I came home from the hospital. I tell that to people and nobody believes me, but
You
it's the truth.
remember that, right?
Totally, totally. I remember their emotions and all that. Yeah, so they read to me, and at some point when I was around 2.5, I decided I'm gonna go off on my own path. I'm gonna read stories on my own, and that love of reading just hasn't really stopped ever since.
Not two, not three. It was a 2.5.
Yep, right in the middle, you know? Gotta be specific.
Of course.
2 month, like 2 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, gotta get down to the wire.
4 hours, 6 minutes, 12 seconds, like that. I actually do believe that you can remember the emotion that you talked about of semi-joking. I think you were talking, but I think you can actually remember in some way, some strange and interesting way, the emotion of that coming home and all that you felt from your parents. So not so crazy. So what then motivated you to share books and reading for other kids and young people and even the adults?
So I kind of touched on that a little bit already. So but the actual inspiration came when I talked to a person named Molly Ness or Dr. Molly Ness, and she hosts a podcast called End Book Deserts. And she asked me to be a part of it, and she interviewed me, but I didn't really know what book deserts were. I soon learned that they're areas where books are scarce, and there are millions of book deserts throughout just the United States in itself. And learning that, I mean, I'd always known that a lot of kids didn't have access to stories or the same resources, but knowing that Molly was doing something inspired me to kind of do something on my own. In my own right, I had already been sharing videos, sharing book reviews, but I really wanted to get out there after that. That was kind of my aha moment, and I haven't really stopped since.
That's pretty cool. You know, book deserts, it's not, you hear of food deserts, you don't hear of book deserts very often. And, you know, I saw
Right.
something a little while back where maybe a 2-year-old or whatnot, they gave him a book and he was trying to swipe like you do on an iPad. He wasn't used to reading a book, which is funny. It is, but it's you know, kind of sad in a way too, right?
Right.
But
And
it's,
that's what I'm trying to do. People are always on their phones, especially kids, and kind of substitute that phone for a book every once in a while. I mean, there are ebooks as well that you can read online through your phone, but I don't think that's what many people are doing at this point.
yeah, so share with us. I'm a big fan of imagination and childhood and playtime and imagination is a big deal. And with the space programs going on, imagination is coming back, which is really great.
Yeah.
Share with us what you think about imagination, how you think it can be important and fun.
So, imagination, in my eyes, isn't necessarily what everybody would think. When somebody hears the word imagination, a lot of people would say, oh, imaginary friends, maybe flying to the moon. And that's a big part of imagination. But in reality, imagination is ideas. Ideas always stem from imagination. Thomas Edison wouldn't have come up with the light bulb if he didn't imagine, what if we could power light, create light with electricity?
Mhm.
No, but like all these ideas stem from imagination. And so that's what makes it powerful. And of course, from a fun standpoint, I mentioned earlier, I mean, maybe taking that trip to outer space, the space programs, like you said, just imagination is both a creative outlet for you, but also it's kind of a safe space. It's a lot like books, if you want to tie it back to books. Books are meant to be a place where you can be yourself, and that's where imagination really comes hand in hand with stories.
Yeah, I agree. A great point. Because when you're reading a book, you almost have to imagine what it looks like and this and that, and the book
Yeah.
takes you somewhere else. And there's something about I don't know if you've ever done this. I did this as a kid, you know, lying in bed and thinking, wonder what it'd be like if I was in a rocket that had infinite fuel and it could just keep going. How far could it go? And so you're imagining it just keeps going and going and going, which is hard to imagine, but it's kind of fun and aggravating at the same time.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That would, I mean, that would be amazing, but at the same time, like you said, aggravating. That's kind of what imagination is. It's like, it's not necessarily aggravating, but it's just, it's always there. It's never going to go away. And it's like that nagging, but sort of lovable nagging that you like from a family member.
Lovable nagging. Is that the grandmother twitching your cheeks type of
Something
no.
like that.
So I saw you like, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw that you liked the Beatles, or I read that you liked the Beatles,
Mhm.
or your mom sang about it or something. I can't remember, but you like the Beatles, as I do, and you play the ukulele, which I have one, but I don't play it. First of all, is that all true? And do you read about the Beatles and the ukulele?
So you're right in the fact that I do have a ukulele, but like you, I have no idea how to play it.
Oh, good.
I used to run around or walk around the house when I was little, always holding my ukulele. I would strum it, I would sing. A lot of the songs were Beatles songs, but I mean, I thought that I knew how to play, but then I realized this it's kind of hurting my ears, and I'm the one playing. I don't really know how to play ukulele. There might be a life goal one day, and the Beatles part is 100% true. I am a huge Beatles fan, kind of one in a million, I guess you could say, when it comes to kids,
Yeah.
because a lot of kids aren't really into that kind of stuff. But the Beatles, their music is just something that's always stayed with me. My parents, they did, when I was little, they kind of had Beatles lullabies that they found. They also gave me more adult ebooks, but they had pictures. I could connect with the Beatles through pictures. But I've also discovered a lot of children's books for Beatles, especially middle grade or picture books. One by Dan Gutman is called Wait, What? The Beatles Couldn't Read Music. That's the title, and it's all about fun facts about the Beatles that are obscure and not many people would know. The Beatles are just, I love that people are kind of continuing that tradition, keeping them on. The beat goes on, and yeah, I love the Beatles. I like 80s music as well. Yeah, I guess that old soul thing that you said might be true because I can't get that stuff out of my head.
Well, don't try to. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Do you have a favorite song by Beatles?
Favorite song. My mom's favorite is I Will, but I think my favorite is maybe Yesterday. I like Yesterday and Michelle as well. Those are my top two.
there's actually a good movie called Yesterday.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Pretty
Yeah, it's very good. I
pretty
also
funny.
played I
I
played
know.
the yeah, I play the piano Beatles songs on the piano. So that's where I can kind of out like cross between them. I sing and I play the piano for the Beatles songs.
I love that. I can't wait to hear that because I'm a huge Beatles fan also. So we talk a lot. Obviously, we talk about a lot of leaders who care on this
Mhm.
series because we talk and know a lot of leaders who care who actually do better in business in their life because they do care. You note that kindness was always present to you with
Mhm.
parents and whatnot. Tell us about that and how this felt for you.
Great question. So
No, thank you.
kindness, yeah, it's always been it's always been present in my life. My parents have been they show love to me. They're very kind. They're there for me. And my family's there for me. The book community that I've joined and just have fallen in love with has supported me. But I also look to unkindness that I've dealt with. I've been bullied a lot in school, kind of because of what I do, but also, most are on their phones. I do not have a phone. I'm a big reader, doesn't always mesh well. But I've learned to, when you face unkindness, that kind of becomes a part of you. But you can determine, it'll always become a part of you, but you can determine how you use that part of you. I use unkindness, I use bullying as kind of what not to do, who not to become. When I'm bullied, I just know I don't want to do that. I want to build people up. I don't want to break people down. So I kind of mix the good, the bad, the ugly, and it just becomes me.
Well, me as in you is the
Yeah,
best.
me as in you, but I think that can like apply to everybody as well.
Yeah. No, and you're right on. Thanks for sharing that because you'll find tomorrow, next week, next year, whatnot, the ones that, think they're the cool ones are not really the cool ones. In fact, they're usually working for the ones that they thought weren't cool and stuff.
Just to
And
think about. And I think that'll happen. I hope that'll happen.
and to your point about no phones, states like Florida are now mandating a certain age can't be on social media and that no phones in schools during school. So good for you. You're gonna grab a lot more intelligence and EQ, etc. by who you are like that. And that leads me to how did you come up with the E-Train Talks name?
That's another great question. And it's one that I'm asked a lot, but people always expect some crazy answer. I've climbed to the top of Mount Everest, and that's when I came up with the realization that I am E-Train. But what actually happened is my dad came up with the nickname E-Train for me when I was really little. I don't necessarily know why, but my cousins, they kind of had nicknames similar, not necessarily in the train form, but um, my dad just came up with E-Train, and when I started social media, my parents and I were on board that, I guess, on board E-Train. See what I did
Got
there?
it.
Yeah, I gotta mix that in. So we didn't want my real name to be used on social media because there can be weirdos out there, and
Yeah.
we just kind of wanted to alter persona, and E-Train was what I came up with. And soon when I started talking about books, when I started reviewing stories, interviewing the authors, um, talks kind of came into the mix. E-Train Talks was a talk all about stories. And I talk a
Love
lot.
it. I love it. I wonder if were you moving around like a locomotive all the time, and that's why they called you like a train? Or I thought there was
Maybe that could be it. I have to ask them.
no. The E train is interesting because a lot of like New York and whatnot have letters for their train. They're called like the E train, the C train, and stuff
Yeah,
like that. So I think it's a great name, and I see comic books and other stuff, other animations coming out of E train somewhere that
yeah.
that could be really great. Share if you can your experiences and what impact you've seen and even heard from like other kids, but also from like librarians you talk to, other authors. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So with kids, I feel like I've made a really big impact. A lot of the kids that I meet with, I give them all free new books. And a lot of people, when they give a story, they maybe drop them off in the front office and then leave. But what I do is I take time to talk with the kids, to really connect with them. That's what really builds that love of reading. That's what kind of starts it. Because you can give someone a story, but they don't know what to do next. They never really had one for theirself. So I show what makes stories so amazing, what makes books so amazing, and I talk to the kids, I answer their questions. Yeah, I mean, kids, like, I mean, I am one. I feel like that can also leave a bit of an impact on them. They see that I'm their age, I might be a little bit older than them, and I've started my own journey, and maybe that'll inspire them to carve their own paths. And I think it really has. I've talked to a lot of kids, and they've said that, oh, they're inspired to start their own podcast. They want to start talking about books. They want to start YouTube. And it just feels really good because, I mean, they can hear from adults, but when they really hear from one of their peers, when I have the chance to talk to them, I feel like that can leave a bigger impact, a little imprint on them. Like, I can do that too.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. You know, lots of times, and this happens with adults too, if you see somebody, like you see him, see her, somebody that you think, you know, you can relate to and they're doing something, it gives you the confidence that you can do it too and whatnot. So I guarantee you, even you probably don't even know all the people, all the kids that you're impacting that
Yeah.
are so yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. How does it feel talking to authors that have written like crazy
Yeah.
good books? How does that feel?
So with librarians and authors especially, I've had a really, really kind and exciting interaction. So, like you said, I've been talking to authors who the stories that they write, I read them even before I started my own book journey. And having the chance to really talk one-on-one with them and connecting with them, that just, I mean, honestly, I've been doing this for a couple of years, but it still feels surreal. I mean, each week, even each day, I have the chance to meet even more authors who are sharing their stories, and they're all so kind. They're just the book community in itself, whether it's teachers, librarians, authors, or even just book lovers, they're all just so welcoming, so warm, and I was just somebody new into this community when I started out. I just sent a tweet out into the wild saying, "Hey, does anybody want to be interviewed?" And like that, 70 people responded overnight. It's just it's an East train that has just not stopped rolling. And
Love it.
librarians, I mean, there are some librarians who have gone crazy viral. They've become famous for what they do, to spread library joy on social media as well. But just having the chance to talk face to face with a librarian, librarians care so much about kids, about readers, everybody. It's a butterfly effect of care, of love, of kindness, and it just makes my heart feel full.
Nice, get the butterfly effect in there. Well done.
Yeah,
Librarians, yeah, librarians like teachers don't get enough credit. Um,
absolutely.
there's no doubt about it. And ever hear of a person called Malcolm Gladwell?
Mm-mm.
Famous writer, famous super smart guy, and he talks about storytelling among a million other things. And he said, you don't necessarily have to go to an exotic country or somewhere else. You just got to go to the pharmacy and speak to the cashier and ask her what her story is, and she'll have a story too. So the point you made before about storytelling and stories, it's big, and a lot of people do. And if people would just read and or listen to other people's stories, it makes everybody feel good. And I think that's what you're doing right now. So
Yeah.
it's pretty fantastic. Has the experience you've had, the interest you've received, the interactions that you've had, has it changed anything for you, like your ideas of things or the world, school, things like that?
That's a really good question. And so, and I'm just gonna take that second to think. I
Go for
mean,
it.
yeah.
Well, have
So,
friends treated you differently? Have you
yeah.
looked at things differently in the world? Have you looked at people differently?
So with social media, there's gonna be a lot of love, but there's also gonna be a lot of hate. Maybe not hate directed towards me, but just hate out there in the world. And there's war, there's pain, there's grief, and there's prejudice. I see a lot of prejudice online towards different people, different cultures, and I just started to think that um I need to do more. I mean, it's hard to think that when I already feel like I'm doing a lot, but I just I notice more. And in middle school there can be a lot of bullying. Like you asked, there have been a lot of people that have treated me differently. They sometimes see me on my school district's website and they're like, "What did you do this time?" And maybe sometimes in a kind way, but maybe sometimes in a mean way.
Right.
And um
Well,
it's
sometimes you realize sometimes that's
yeah,
from
it can be
jealousy or insecurity also.
right. And I try to tell myself that, but even as a kid, like especially as a kid, that can kind of get to you, but I don't let it stop me. I've learned the more I'm bullied, the more I've like kind of push it aside because I know that what I'm doing is good. I know that these people are paying attention, whether for good or for bad. And like you said, jealousy, it could be that. And but also I try to look from a different point of view because the kids, like, I mean, they might be jealous, but they also bullies have really tough home lives. I've learned, and I I try to look at everything from a different lens, especially since I've been on social media, and look for a second thought, a third thought, a another idea, and just kind of second guess everything because your first idea of something of someone might not always be true.
100%. You shouldn't judge in a minute because you don't know what's happened to that other person to
Right.
make them do that. And I think you'll find, if you haven't already, that what we call active listening is really important. People just want to be heard,
Yeah.
and so you're allowing a lot of that by talking about and reading books, because in that sense you are hearing what people are saying also, and so it's pretty cool. But I was going to ask you, do you have any favorite books or favorite style of books, or is it a whole bunch?
Well, I knew you were gonna ask that. I just had a feeling, and
You
I've
knew.
got yeah. I always come prepared. I got my favorite books right here. I'll just hold them up so I can get back in that angle. Um, so I have favorite books for different reasons. A lot of my favorite books have had both an impact on me as a reader, but also an impact on me as a member of the book community. So Percy Jackson, it's one of the really popular book series, one of my favorites, by Rick Riordan. This was the first fiction book that I really liked. For years, for the majority of my life, maybe from 2.5 when I first started reading to maybe 10, I didn't like fiction. I only read nonfiction. There were these series called Who Was books, biographies, maybe
Yeah.
recollections of different events. But Percy Jackson was recommended to me by a friend, and that was the first fiction book that I got into. I mean, I'm not the biggest fantasy reader, and that is fantasy, but that was kind of what kicked it off, and it's one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna go one by one. So I'm gonna try and keep the synopsises to a shortness.
It's not a 2 hour show.
So this is Uprising by Jennifer Nielsen. It's not necessarily the book that has made a big impact on me. I mean, of course, it's an amazing story, a really powerful one. But the author, Jennifer Nielsen, she is the founder of Book Drop, which is an organization that partners with literacy advocates or nonprofits like myself who, so she sponsored me, and I was able to give over 500 free signed books to an entire elementary school. I got to bring a best-selling author to a local one, and I got to talk in an assembly. We led one, and it was just one of the greatest experiences of my life.
I bet. That's great.
So this is a newer story that just recently came out. It's called Louder Than Hunger by John Shu, and it tackles a lot of interesting and deep and really powerful topics. That's a story that just as a reader has really left a mark on me. I've learned to think about the world differently, and
Is it
that's
about
really
hunger?
what books can do. Hmm?
It's about hunger? What is it about?
So it's about this boy named Jake, and he he just stopped eating. He has this voice inside of him that tells him that he's fat, tells him that he's ugly, and he listens to it. He has to go to a hospital because he just won't eat, and he has to completely change his outlook on life. And that kind of changed my outlook on life. I may not suffer from the same thoughts as him. I mean, of course, we do all have that inner demon, the inner unkindness, but I just it's kind of that second guessing that I was talking
Yeah.
about. That's what Louder Than Hunger really did. And then right here, Starfish I wrote a review on Starfish, and it was the first time when I shared it, it was the first time an author ever looked at it, ever shared that they loved it. And yeah,
That's
those
awesome.
just I knew I had to come prepared because I'd be searching in my bookshelf for hours. But
No.
yeah, those
I'm
are some books
I'm
that
glad you did, and it looks like there's a good variety there, and
yeah,
and I just love the way you give some thought to it, and I'm sure authors love when people give some thought to their book and don't just read and put it down and that's it type of thing. So
yeah.
really, really good for you. And I guess last question on this part. You know what we say in Los Angeles? We have to keep everybody wanting more so we can do a sequel. So maybe we'll have to do a sequel
Yeah.
for sure. But what's next for you? I mean, is the talk around town that this is only the beginning of the E train? You're at the beginning of the tracks, or what is next? What do you think is next?
Well, the E Train talk around town is true. There's a lot that's coming on. I have a lot of interviews that are going to be out pretty soon. I talked with a librarian who's been talked to by the Rolling Stone, by Forbes. He has about 1 million followers combined. His name is Michael Threets, and so that was a pretty interesting interview. But I've also, besides that, I'm talking to a lot of authors. And for any adults out there, a lot of the authors that I talk to, while I mainly highlight their middle grade books, they do have adult stories out there for you. So yeah, and then in early May, I'm going to be going to Chicago. I'm there for a national tournament for kind of like an academic decathlon. It's called Quiz Bowl. It's basically like trivia mixed with all different sorts of categories of trivia. Basically Jeopardy, but you don't say what is, and the questions are longer. That's kind of to break it down into one sentence. And along that in Chicago, I was asked to lead an assembly to a middle school in that area, and I'm going to be able to talk to about 300 kids, and it's an opportunity that wouldn't really have arisen if not for, I guess, extracurriculars. I already have so many, and then just add another one, and new opportunities come. So that's what's on the tracks, and hopefully that won't be the last stop at a station, and we'll keep that going, get more passengers on the E train.
Yeah, good for you for saying that. Yeah, you know, they say that and you're kind of young for a legacy, but you're creating a legacy already. They say the best legacy is helping other people become better people. And so
Yeah.
everybody getting on that E train, that's what's going to make that happen. So way to go. I'm going to send you a book that's a little different than all your books because it's a learning book, if you will, and it's a book about conflict. And
Hmm.
it's the opposite of conflict, and it's we talked about active listening before and things like that,
Yeah.
and it's really to your point about the world's in a bad place right now. This is a book that talks about how we can engage with each other better and look at conflict not as something you hate somebody over, but just different ideas and stuff like that. So I like what's next for you, and I'm looking forward to getting on the train myself. I think I just do I have to buy a ticket or can you just come on?
Free of charge. Free of
Love
charge.
it. Hey, listen, thanks for being a leader who cares. You deserve to be on this, and we look forward to all the great things you're going to do in the future, and really love what you're doing. So, way to go, Ethan. Way to go, E-Train.
Thank you. And thank you for highlighting all the leaders who care, because you can't have leaders who care without other leaders who care about the leaders who care, you know?
I care. I
So
know.
let's
I
hop on
care.
that E-Train, everybody, and thank you all so much for listening. And if you haven't already, keep on reading. Check out the other Leaders Who Care interviews. They're all amazing. And have a great day. Bye.
And look up the E-Train, man. Right?
Yeah, etraintalks.com. That's where you can find everything.
Love it. Thanks, E-Train.
Thank you.